Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. Not until that night in the WWE locker room. It happened in 2018. I was just a rookie, barely a year into the business, still trying to prove myself. I wasn't one of the big guys, just another grunt working backstage, running errands, setting up gear, keeping my head down. That night, I was the last one left in the locker room. The show was over, the crowd had gone home, and most of the guys were already on the road to the next city. I like staying late. It gave me time to soak it all in, to breathe in the sweat and steel and history of the place. That was my first mistake. See, every arena has its own stories. Some are just road tales, exaggerated, twisted over time, but some stick with you. The veterans had a particular one they liked to tell. A story about locker number 113. Stay away from that one, kid, they'd say. No one touches it. No one opens it. And if you hear something coming from inside, walk the hell away. I thought it was just hazing. A little initiation ritual for the new guys. I laughed it off. Hell, I even made a joke about it once. But that night, when I was alone in that dimly lit room, the laughter stopped. It started with a sound, a soft, rhythmic knocking. I froze. It was coming from the far end of the room, from a row of dented steel lockers, from locker number 113. I turned slowly. My skin prickled. My breath caught in my throat. The locker door was open just a crack, just enough to see the sliver of black inside. That didn't make sense. I was sure it had been shut when I walked in. A cold wave of air swept through the room. My arms broke out in goosebumps. My breath, I could see it, like it was the dead of winter. The knocking stopped. Then, slam. The locker door slammed shut on its own. I stumbled back, heart hammering in my chest. The room was silent, but it wasn't empty. I felt something, watching, waiting. Then it spoke. A voice. Low, raspy, wrong. Get out before it's too late. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my bag. I don't remember opening the door. 1 second I was standing there, feet frozen to the ground, and the next I was sprinting down the hallway, my pulse thundering in my ears. I didn't look back. The next day, I asked one of the veterans about it, just in passing, real casual. I didn't want to sound crazy. He didn't laugh, didn't even smile. He just got real quiet. His expression changed, like I'd said something I wasn't supposed to say. Finally, he muttered, "That locker belonged to a wrestler back in the 90s. Guy broke his neck in a match. Died in the ring. Never left." I told myself it was a joke. Some backstage legend meant to scare the rookies. But the next time I stepped into that locker room, I noticed something. No one ever touched locker number 113. No one ever stood near it. And once during a live show, I swore I saw it move. Just a little. Just enough to let me know it was still watching. Story 2. The first thing you learn in this business is that wrestling isn't just about the moves. It's about trust. When you step into that ring, you're putting your body, and sometimes your life, in someone else's hands. You have to believe they'll be there when you need them. That's why what happened that night still doesn't make sense to me. Because I know what I saw. I know who I tagged. And I know he wasn't supposed to exist. It was a small town show, one of those dark matches before the main event that no one really remembers. The kind of match that lets the rookies prove themselves while the crowd files in, half paying attention. I've been wrestling for a few years, mostly mid-card, never quite breaking through. That night, I was tagging with a veteran, a guy named Charlie Graves. Charlie wasn't a legend, but he was the kind of guy everyone in the business respected. Tough as nails, always willing to put in the work. I'd heard stories about him when I was a kid, watching wrestling with my dad. He was one of the old school guys. Hard-hitting, no nonsense. The funny thing was, I never actually met Charlie before that night. It was last-minute booking. My original partner no-showed, and the promoter pulled me aside. Told me I was tagging with Charlie instead. I didn't ask questions. When you're trying to climb the ranks, you don't question a veteran stepping in. You just say yes. Charlie didn't say much when we met. Just gave me a nod, laced up his boots, and went through the usual pre-match routine. Something about him felt off, though. His eyes were dark, not in color, but in depth, like there was nothing behind them, like he wasn't all there. But I figured maybe it was just the way the years wore on him. Wrestling does that to you. The match started off fine. The crowd was into it, and my opponents were working stiff but fair. Every time I glanced over, Charlie was there, standing on the apron, gripping the tag rope. He didn't move much, just watched, waiting for the moment I needed him. Then came the tag. I took a hard clothesline, went down flat, and crawled toward the corner. I reached out, my palm slapping Charlie's hand, and in an instant, he was in the ring. The next 30 seconds were a blur of motion. Charlie moved like a man possessed, running through the other team like they were nothing. Hard strikes, stiff kicks, the kind of offense you don't see much anymore. The crowd ate it up. Then, as suddenly as he'd entered the ring, he was gone. I was on the mat, catching my breath, and when I turned to tag out, he wasn't there. Not on the apron, not on the floor, nowhere. I felt my stomach twist. My head whipped around to the ref. Where'd he go? I asked, my voice shaking. The ref gave me a weird look. Oh. I pointed to the empty corner, heart hammering. Charlie, my partner. He was just here. The ref shook his head. You've been wrestling solo the whole match, man. I stared at him, feeling the blood drain from my face. That wasn't possible. I felt the tag. I saw Charlie step through the ropes. I heard the crowd react to him. And yet, something was wrong with the crowd. They weren't reacting the way they should have been. The cheers felt thinner, weaker. Some of them were just staring, like they didn't know what they'd just seen, or like they'd seen something else. I turned back toward the ring and felt the breath leave my lungs. There was someone in my corner. Not Charlie, not my opponent, something else. A dark figure stood just outside the ropes, not moving, not even breathing, just standing there, watching me. Its face was wrong, like a smudged-out photograph, featureless but still staring. I blinked, and in that instant, it was gone. I don't remember the rest of the match. I must have finished it, must have taken the pin, but all I remember is leaving that ring as fast as I could, rushing to the locker room, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I asked around. No one had seen Charlie. No one even knew who I was talking about. Later that night, I did something I wish I hadn't. I looked up Charlie Graves. The first article that popped up hit me like a steel chair to the skull. Former wrestler Charlie Graves found dead in hotel room. 1996. I felt my entire body go cold. Charlie had died almost 20 years ago. I read the details, my hands shaking. It was after a house show. He was supposed to be in a tag match that night, but he never made it to the ring. Instead, they found him alone in his hotel room, still in his gear. No one knew what happened. Some said heart failure. Others whispered about something darker. But now, I knew the truth. Charlie had made it to the ring that night, just not in the way anyone expected. And somehow, all these years later, he had come back. Maybe he never left. Maybe he was still out there, waiting for the match he never got to finish. All I know is I never wrestled a tag match again, because sometimes when you reach out for the tag, you don't know what's going to tag in. Story 3. The thing about being on the road with WWE is that after a while, everything blends together. The cities, the arenas, the crowds. You wrestle, you shower, you pack up, and you move on to the next town. But every now and then, something sticks with you. And sometimes, it sticks in ways you wish it wouldn't. That night, we were booked for a house show in a small, middle-of-nowhere town. One of those places that had probably been booming 40 years ago, but now felt like it was held together by rust and nostalgia. The kind of place where the buildings seemed tired, like they just wanted to lie down and be forgotten. The arena wasn't much better. Old, dusty, reeking of stale beer and sweat soaked into the concrete from decades of matches. The ceiling was high, crisscrossed with steel beams, and the seats were the kind that had probably been painted over 100 times to hide the wear. The show itself was uneventful. The crowd was decent, but nothing special. I worked my match, did my routine, and by the time the last bout wrapped up, most of the guys were already headed to the hotel or the nearest bar. I, on the other hand, decided to stay back and get in some extra ring time. Maybe work on a few spots, test out some new sequences. That's when it started. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just a feeling. You know that sensation when you're alone in a room, but you swear someone's there? That creeping pressure against your skin, like unseen eyes pressing into the back of your skull. That, I ignored it at first, focused on my footwork, on my breathing, but the feeling didn't go away. It got heavier, more oppressive, like the air had thickened. I stopped moving. The arena was supposed to be empty now, aside from a few crew members finishing up. But it felt wrong, off. I scanned the seats, expecting nothing. And then I saw them. 2 red eyes, glowing faintly from the upper deck. They weren't reflections. They weren't the dull glow of an exit sign. They were eyes, and they were staring right at me. I felt my stomach tighten into a cold, hard knot. My body wanted to move, to run, but I couldn't. I was rooted in place, my breath caught somewhere between my ribs. Then they moved, not in a normal way, not like someone shifting in their seat. It was too smooth, too unnatural. One moment, they were in the farthest row. The next, they were closer, a few rows down, still staring, still unblinking. The sound came next, a whisper, but not a single voice. Many. It came from all around me, seeping into my ears, into my bones. It was like standing in the middle of a crowd. Only the words weren't in any language I understood. Just a low, rhythmic hiss, rising and falling like the tide. The lights above flickered, my vision blurred, and then darkness, total, absolute. I gasped, reaching out, feeling nothing but air. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. I heard my own breath, shaky and uneven. The kind of breath that belongs to someone who knows they're not alone. Something was near me. I could feel it. The air was thick with it, electric and wrong. I had the overwhelming sense that if I didn't move, if I didn't get the hell out of that ring right now, something was going to happen. Something bad. The lights flickered back on. The eyes were gone. But the feeling wasn't. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my gear and bolted for the exit, nearly tripping over my own feet as I sprinted out of that arena like my life depended on it. Because maybe it did. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked one of the local crew guys about the place. Told him I thought I'd seen something. He gave me a strange look. Then he told me, back in the 80s, the arena used to be a major wrestling venue, one of the biggest territories in the region. But there was an accident. A wrestler, big name back in the day, collapsed in the ring during a match. No one knows exactly what happened, but they say he died before they could even get him backstage. Some say it was a heart attack. Others say it was something else, something darker. But the part that stuck with me, the part that made my skin crawl, was what he said next. They say he never left. That some nights, wrestlers see something watching them from the upper deck. A pair of glowing red eyes, waiting for a fight that never ended.